This is Flipping Junkie Podcast, Episode 2. Welcome to the Flipping Junkie Podcast. My name is Danny Johnson, former software developer turned house flipper, flipping hundreds of houses. Each week, we bring you interviews, strategies, stories, and motivation to help you get started flipping houses and on your way to becoming your own boss and achieving financial freedom. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's get to it. All right, today I've got a good friend of mine on the show. Now, truth be told, I thought it'd take more work to get him to agree to be on the show as he's so busy with being the senior editor at Bigger Pockets. But he said absolutely and scheduled the interview immediately. Brandon's a very down-to-earth guy. He knows a lot about flipping houses and real estate investing in general. Now, we had a lot of fun with this episode, and a lot of great ideas were shared. Among them, Brandon shares the benefits of starting flipping houses with a house that you're going to live in. Don't have a lot of money to get started? You'll want to listen to this. Now, among the things that are shared in this episode also is a 10-day window where owner-occupants can bid on HUD foreclosures before investors can. Now, talk about limiting the competition. We also talk about the right and wrong way to wholesale houses. And Brandon shares his 2 strategies for avoiding trouble. So listen up, take notes, and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Flipping Junkie Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Johnson. Super excited today to have Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets on the show. Thanks for being on the show, Brandon. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on. I know you're pretty busy. To get started, just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit busy. You know, that's not too bad. I make times for my buddies, and you're my buddy, so we got this.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, we were just talking about, because I was on the Bigger Pockets podcast, and I know it's been a while back, and you just looked it up, and it was, what, number 18?
Yeah, number 18, way back. biggerpockets.com/show18. Yeah, that was May of 2013. So, yeah, you're like one of the original BP podcast guests, so we're going to get you back soon.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, that'd be great. And you guys are, what episode are you guys on now?
Oh, man, 140, I think, or something like that. 139, 40, somewhere in there. Yeah, forever ago.
Wow.
Like, yeah, it's a long time. Like the world of podcasting, we're like grandpas.
Yeah. Well, I know I was really nervous back then, but and like I was saying, you guys were probably even nervous still at that point. But after 18, yeah, you guys have done a ton now, and I really enjoy you guys' show. Yeah, you and Josh.
Well, thank you.
Are great together on that show, and you want to tell everybody kind of the format of the show?
Of the Bigger Pockets show?
Yeah.
Sure. I was going to say I could tell them about your show, but I don't know what your show's format is. So, you know. Bigger Pockets show. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's me and Josh together, and it's pretty much him making fun of me and me making fun of him. And sometimes we get some real estate education out of it. Oh,
I know. There's a ton of information you guys share.
Yeah. It's a good time. We try to, have a good time and try to keep it light and fun and bring on some amazing guests. I mean, every single episode I learn cool stuff. And so I look forward to your podcast for the same thing. I want to, I'm excited to hear your guests and learn new stuff.
Awesome. And a lot of people might not know a lot about your story and how you got started in flipping houses and then becoming a part of Bigger Pockets. And do you want to share a quick,
Sure.
How you got started, why you got interested in flipping and how you got started?
Sure. So I got started, my very first deal ever was a live-in flip. I didn't know anything about real estate, didn't even care about it, didn't want to get into it, nothing. But I bought this single-family house because it was cheaper than renting. I just wanted to save some money. Rented out the bedrooms to some buddies, and I fixed the house up for about 9 months while I lived there. I went and got a book from Home Depot called like 1, 2, 3 Home Improvement. And, I learned how to do pretty much everything you need to kind of rehab a house, like a light cosmetic rehab. Bought it for $80, sold it for $130. Again, 9 months later, and at the end of the day, after paying all the fees and expenses and everything, I probably cleared about $20,000, maybe 25, and it was amazing. So that kind of what started me off my path. I thought I'm going to be a real estate investor.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So you actually did the rehab yourself and learned from a book how to do it. I bet that was interesting, huh?
It was. I still remember calling I remember sitting outside one day in my garage and there's a water heater out there and there's like a leak in the pipe coming out of it. So I'm on the phone with one of my best friends from high school. His dad's a plumber, and I'm like, it's not stopping. I don't know.
I know
why.
where this is going.
Yeah, it's just so ridiculous. Like I spent hours on a single solder trying to figure out how to stop this thing. But today I can solder a copper pipe like any professional plumber out there. But I mean, that's actually a whole different topic we can maybe get into later if you want to. But the idea that I think my ability to learn how to do those things actually hurts me in my flipping. I actually regret learning how to solder a copper pipe and how to lay carpet and how to paint. But just because it's there, I do it. It's hard for me to get out of that mode now because everything's easier for me to just go do myself and rely on systems and other people. So anyway, yeah, that was my first deal. And then I thought I'm going to go be a full-time investor. So I jumped in with both feet, bought a house to flip. And that's 2007. And we all remember what happened back then.
Oh, yeah.
And the market tanked while I was flipping this house. And so I bought it, put a bunch of money into it, spent 9 months on that project, fixing it up, me, my wife, a couple of friends, doing all our own work. And then when it came time to sell, we couldn't sell it. It just was, the market was too bad. And so we turned it into a rental, which got me kind of excited about the idea of rentals. And then I just kind of flipped and bought rentals, occasionally a few every year for the next, I don't know, what are we at now? 8 years later. And today I still do a little bit of flipping. I do a little bit of, like I hold a lot of rentals now, and I do probably a flip or two every year. So I'm not a massive flipper, but I just do them to keep me entertained. I don't do the work anymore though myself, but it's tough.
Yeah, it's best not to do that. I am glad I never really did much of the work. I think I started to on my very first home that I bought. I bought a HUD home for myself to live in. And so sometimes I'll say that's my first deal, and sometimes I'll say, another house that we wholesale was our first deal. Sure. But I ended up working on the HUD home that we lived in, and, that just took forever, and found myself getting frustrated over like really stupid things, like hanging a light fixture. Yep. And having that take 3 hours and bloody knuckles and all kinds of things where I'm ending up cutting bolts off with a hacksaw. And like, how did that even happen? But so it's always best to hire the professionals to get all that stuff done. But
yeah, so, I mean, if you're not finding deals good enough to hire other people, then you're not finding deals good enough, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you have to do your own work in order to make a profit on a property, you're just buying yourself a job, which may be that there are people out there that do that and they succeed at it, but all they're doing is buying themselves a job. Now, maybe that's a better job than what they have, but still it's a job.
Right. And sometimes the holding cost and the time it takes you to get it done, outstrip, it takes away all the benefit of saving the money on the contractor. But
yes.
Let's see. So you flipped the first house and made a profit. And then the second one, the market turned on you and you ended up rented out, became a landlord. So you started in that way. For the listeners out there, what would you say would be the best route to start flipping houses?
Yeah, so I like the idea a lot of starting with, either the house you live in. I'm a huge fan of live-in flips, the idea where you buy a house, fix it up, and live in it, and then sell it. I like those for a couple reasons. One, the financing can be amazing, especially if you can get into what's called a 203K loan or 203K loan, which is it's a homeowner-only loan. Like you have to actually live there, supposedly for a year. But you can get the entire thing. Like let's say the house itself costs $100,000 and then the rehab costs $50,000. So you're in the whole thing for $150,000. You can get these things with just 3.5% down of the entire amount. They have that entire $150,000, which is like, $5,000 or so, give or take a grand or two. But like, significantly cheaper than you're ever going to get from hard money or from whatever else. So I'm a huge fan of that idea of doing a live-in flip. Obviously, not everybody's lifestyle can make that happen. Not everyone's spouses or kids want to live in a rehab project. But I think it's a terrific way to start. I've done it. I'm actually doing it right now. I'm closing on a house on Friday of this week. That's going to be a new primary residence for me. So I'm buying it, and then I'm going to be fixing the whole thing up before I move into it. And then I'm going to move into it for a few years and kind of treat it like a live-in flip.
Cool. Yeah. And is that a HUD home or is that...
It is not a HUD home, but I'm using an FHA loan on it. It's actually a home, a friend of a friend, sort of, or a friend went through a divorce a few years ago, and it was real messy. And so he's had this house for a couple of years now, and then I saw he put it up on the market, just listed it up with a realtor. And I went and talked to him like, hey, I like this house. It's a great neighborhood, great house, great potential in it. What do you think about just selling it to me? So he gave me a good deal on it, and I'm nice. I'm pretty excited. So it should, we're getting it for $280,000, so it's a little bit higher end of where I live. It's the nicest area in my town, which in my area, 280 is, it's really nice. But I think the thing's gonna be worth $450 when it's finished.
Nice.
And so we'll probably get be able to live in this nice house for a few years, and then when we sell it, make a nice profit.
Yeah, and one thing for people that do consider doing that as one of their first flips, or even after doing 10 or 20 flips, the nice thing about buying for yourself to live in is that you can have first dibs on HUD homes.
Yes, it's huge, that benefit.
Mm-hmm. And HUD homes are FHA foreclosures, right? So
correct.
And so what they do is whenever they sell HUD homes, they basically, there's the initial time period. I don't know, it's been so long, 10 days or something?
Yeah, I think it's usually 10 days. I've seen even up to like 29 days or something like that, which was crazy. But yeah, they give that homeowner only exclusion. I hate it.
Yeah. So investors can't buy it unless they're going to live in it. So you have that chance of getting a great deal before all the investors have a chance to. So that's like one of the first places I would say to look for a deal are the HUD homes.
Yep.
And they have a website, right? Do you know if they have was it HUD Home Store or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's HUDHomestore.com.
Right, so that's one to check out for anybody interested in that kind of thing. Now, what about time period and holding that? Isn't there a benefit of holding it for more than a couple of years?
There is, yeah. So the idea is you live in the property for more than 2 years. I mean, of course, I'm not a CPA. Danny's not a CPA. Talk to a CPA, lawyer, whatever. But this idea that if you live in a house for more than 2 years, the IRS says don't worry about the taxes when you sell it. So normally, if I go buy a house and then I sell it next month and I make $30,000, I'm going to pay 10 of that in taxes, and that sucks. But if I live in the house for 2 years and I sell it and I make $30,000, I get to keep that whole thing. It's mine. Now, there's a lot of details that go with it. Like you have to, you can't. It's like $250,000 per person or something like that. And there's a bunch of things, but overall, most people can take advantage of that, which is also a huge benefit of living in the property.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that this idea that what you asked, what's a good way to start out? The reason I like this so much is because if you do it right, you can maybe make $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 on your very first deal, and you get to learn the entire process in and out while you're living there with low down financing, with the best chance for getting a good deal. I mean, there's all these benefits, and at the end of the day, you make this big profit that you can then pour into your next investments and then kind of go forward from there. So that's why
I have to pay a ton of capital gains taxes on the profit.
Yeah, it's just all around. It's cool. It's a fun way to start.
Well, that's awesome because most people, when you ask them, what's the best way to start, and it typically is partner with somebody and flip and all that kind of stuff, or a lot of times really mainly, and one that I even recommend a lot of times is wholesaling, wholesaling houses. And so that's awesome to hear a different strategy, and that's one that's not really talked about that often. So we appreciate you bringing that up because, man, there are a lot of things. It makes me kind of want to start going to look for my next house to move into.
That's the other cool thing, right? So the house I'm buying is up. It's like I said, it's in the nicest area of my entire town. It overlooks. I can see about 50 miles in every direction because it's at the top of a hill. I've got a hot tub. It's got this massive fireplace and like a 3-story living room. I mean, it's really a cool house. I would never normally live in a house like that. However, because I know that it's an investment and a single family home, it's almost, even someday, let's say I sell it 3 years from now and I make no money on it other than what I put into the property. I still got to live in an incredible house for essentially free or, for cheap.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's another reason why, I think it's kind of a cool idea is you get to enjoy life in an amazing house. As long as you get the rehab done quick. Don't make the mistake of waiting till the day you move out to do the rehab like I'm doing on my current house.
Well, Melissa and I have to fly up there and check it out at some
point.
You
should. You definitely should. By the way, yeah, that's right. You fly, right?
Yeah, but that's quite a distance. I'd probably do commercial with. I don't know if Melissa would be interested in being in the small plane for that amount of time, but it would be cool, flying over the mountains and everything. So.
Yeah, yeah, I think that would be a long ways to fly, but I'm super interested in flying. I put it on my goal for the next 5 years is to get my license and start flying. So I'm gonna have to come down there and go flying with you someday.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, just be sure whenever you check out flight instructors that you at least go up with maybe 3 to find one that you feel best with because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. That's my biggest piece of advice for that. But
that's great to know.
And that could go also with finding a mentor for house flipping, real estate investing. You never want to just go with someone that's really saying that they're going to help you. You got to make sure that they're the real deal.
That was a fantastic transition, by the way. You are a born podcaster. That was great. No, but I totally agree.
Yeah, just trying to make it to where we're not going off and talking about our interests that people are like, I don't really want to find out about that. But
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll start an aviation podcast. But
there you go. You mentioned a second ago the idea of wholesaling. A lot of people recommend that. I generally, and I know So I used to always recommend people start wholesaling. Lately, I've been kind of shifting away from that, and I tell people more of the idea of the live-in house. And the reason I do that, and again, everyone's got their own thing, and I know a lot of wholesalers who succeeded, right off the bat. But there's so many people who get this idea that wholesaling is super easy and that anybody can do it with no money, and you can sit in your pajamas and watch TV, and just wish you had it, and you'll start making money wholesaling. There's so much of this like culture behind wholesaling that just bothers me, and that like I know guys like you and others are trying to encourage people not. I mean, like we're trying to make the problem better, right? But there's still like
Right.
this culture of that wholesaling is that it takes no work and no effort. But wholesaling is hard. I mean, it's not an easy task until you get systems down or whatever else. So that's why I usually say like if you're a wholesaler, if you want to be good at wholesaling, you got to be good at the rehabbing, the estimating the rehab costs. You got to be good at networking, good at finding deals, good at selling deals, good at marketing. You got to be good at a ton of stuff. And the average newbie I see is good at like one thing, and that's whining about not having enough money. And so like not to be mean, but like most people, that's the only problem they have is that I have no money. I need more money. They don't have skills on all those other areas. And so if you can try to build those skills. And so if people are going to start with wholesaling, I think it's fantastic. But what I would do is I would find a flipper in that area and say, what do you need? What kind of property do you need? Teach me how to get you that property, and I will do the legwork and get you that property. And I think that if you're going to wholesale, I think that's the way to wholesale personally.
Right. Absolutely. I agree 100%, because then you're building the relationship. You're getting, the mentor that will help you through every step of the way with other things. So as things come up, you have somebody to contact. And you're not making bad decisions because you didn't have any knowledge or experience with it. You have somebody there. So, and that is one of the reasons why I tell people to start with wholesaling. And a lot of the hard part of flipping is finding the deals, and you have to become an expert at that for wholesaling because you're making smaller amounts on the deals. Yeah. But you don't need money. Well, you need the money to do some marketing if you're not going to beat the street and spend a lot of time with it. I think a lot of for maybe people that aren't as familiar with all of it, some of the bashing comes from maybe people that get out there and put houses under contract that they had no business putting house under contract, and then not informing the seller of what they were doing, and not being able to close on the house, and it gives everybody a bad name.
Yeah, very much so. And the other reason, wholesalers tend to jump into the game of wholesaling without doing their homework, and a lot of them end up actually breaking the law while they're wholesaling. And there's a right way to wholesale and there's a bad way to wholesale, and a lot of them just jump into the bad way of wholesaling, both illegal and unethical, I think, in ways. Like I hear this common story all the time of somebody who's trying to sell a property, and then some wholesaler comes to them and tries to sell that person their own property because it's passed around from one to another, and everyone lies and says it's their deal, and it just becomes a mess. And so if you're gonna wholesale, learn how to do it right, learn how to do it ethically, learn how to do it legally.
And so how can people do that? What are the ethical and legal ways of doing it?
Sure. So the main problem surrounding the legalities of wholesaling comes down to the idea of not having a license to practice real estate. And so, there's a lot of laws out there that say every state's different, obviously. But I mean, for example, I actually have Washington State law here. I saw it earlier on a blog post. All right, so Washington State, where I live, it said the law says that you cannot be a broker without a license. And then it says the definition of broker is to the listing, selling, purchasing, exchanging, optioning, leasing, renting of real estate or any real properties therein, or to negotiate, to offer, or directly purchase, sale, blah, 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 right? So pretty much, if you look at a piece of real estate, if you're driving by a house and you open your eyes, you're pretty much breaking the law that you're brokering, right? Because you're thinking about doing crazy. It. It's ridiculous, right? But the fact is, it does say if you are, negotiating to put under contract a property, you could be considered to be practicing without a license. So there's two real easy ways to, potentially avoid that. And again, we're not lawyers. We're not giving legal advice here. This is just to, entertainment purposes or whatever. But the two ways that I always hear that generally people say is either go get your license, go become a real estate agent, then you don't even have to worry about that whole issue. Or two, do a double closing rather than an assignment. Again, every state's different. Whether or not you're breaking the law is going to depend on your state. But if you do an assignment, it means you never actually own the property. You simply put it under contract, and then flipped it to another investor. If you double close, you actually buy the property and then sell it. Well, now you're not doing you're not practicing real estate. You're not being a broker. You're not the in-between guy. You physically bought a property and sold it, just like millions of people do every year.
Right.
So those are just two ways to stay safe.
Yeah, and I'm of the opinion of, for the assignment part of things, when you have a contract on a house to buy a house and then you assign it to another investor, basically with the way I do it, I've got, several key people in town that I know buy a lot of houses, pay cash, they close quickly, they make decisions quickly.
Yep.
If I get a property under contract, I contact one of them and say, and I pretty much know that they're going to buy it. And I say, I'll sell you this property for this much. And they say, yeah. And, what I'm doing is actually selling the contract. I'm assigning the contract. So they're paying me for the contract, not for the house.
Exactly.
And so I'm not selling the house, and I'm not marketing it to sell the house. I'm marketing to sell the contract. But I'm actually contacting. So that's how I look at that. And I think what a lot of this boils down to is a lot of sort of gray issues with legal matters is always doing the ethical thing, right?
Yep.
So if you're always honest with everybody, you're not pulling the wool over anybody's eyes. And like Brandon said, where you're not telling people, like if you're wholesaling another wholesaler's deal, you don't act like you're the one that has it under contract. Unless you have an assignment signed from them.
Yeah, you want permission from them. Yep.
Right. So always being open, upfront, and honest with everybody, and that is going to do wonders for keeping you out of trouble more than anything else. So.
Yeah, definitely. And again, some states are worse. I know Ohio, if you're wholesaling in Ohio, Ohio is the first I've heard of that they're like trying to actually crack down on it more, intently. And largely it's because, it's going to hurt everybody, even though it's probably they're just doing it because of the unscrupulous ones, right? The ones that are doing it really like shady, or like, they are cracking down on everyone because of that. So just, be careful, be honest, like you said, and, don't get yourself in trouble.
Right. Okay, with wholesaling, so we talked about the right ways. You're talking about getting your license or buying the property, then selling, which is are great recommendations. So that's the whole wholesaling part of it. Now, what other advice do you have for somebody starting out with regards to not necessarily like a strategy to start with, but if they're on a shoestring budget and looking for deals, do you have any marketing advice?
Sure. So I'm a huge fan of like driving for dollars. I'm a huge fan of that. Just getting in your car or walking. Honestly, come on, this is America. We could all use a little more, steps in our day. So get out there, walk, look for properties that look like potentially, neglected or that nobody's been there. If you think about it, the average person in America moves every 7 years, I think is what they say, which means that, they're buying and or selling. So like at any given point, and, people probably know for 6 months before they're going to actually move that they're going to move. So figure probably on average then 1 out of every 14 houses you look at is probably ready to move. When you think about that, like you walk by a lot of houses, 1/14 of them are interested in moving potentially very soon. Now, how many of those are going to be, sell you a good deal? Who knows? But at any moment, the market is crazy in flux at all points in time. So if you can get in there and just find the ones that look like they might be most motivated. Yeah, I love the idea of driving for dollars. I love the idea, even bigger picture than that. I've been really big lately onto the idea of a funnel, right? Like businesses use funnels all the time. I don't know why real estate investors don't use it as much, but maybe that's changing. This idea that, think of a funnel like you're pouring oil into a car or whatever, right? At the very top, it's wide. At the bottom, it's small. And so the goal of any business is to get as many leads in at the top of the funnel, filter them down the funnel until you have a few that you actually buy. And, so really whatever strategy you want to get into, flipping, wholesaling, landlording, whatever, you have a funnel for buying the property. You got to get as many leads across your desk as possible. You got to analyze, those deals quickly to be able to decide which ones are worth looking at more in depth. Then you got to actually do a real analysis on the ones that you care about. Then you got to make an offer on the ones that are, potential good deals. And then you got to actually get through the negotiation on the ones that you got accepted. And then you got to close on the ones that you got, through the negotiation. So you're taking this big funnel with thousands of potential deals, winding that down to a few, 1, 2, 5, 10 a month that you're actually going to buy. And so I encourage people to focus on that funnel and track it very closely. How many deals came across your desk this week? You know, when people complain to me, I can't find any good deals, I always say, okay, well, how many did you offer on this week?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, how many did you
Yeah, there's
analyze
the
this
reason.
week? Yep, exactly. Like if you're not working your funnel's not going to produce results. Just as simple as that. So start at the funnel, start getting leads. Again, driving for dollars. There's direct mail. There's just the MLS. I mean, if nothing else, start making some offers on the MLS. You'll probably won't get any, but you know, at least your funnel's working then, and you can start tracking those numbers to be able to improve on it.
Yeah, and tracking those numbers is huge. I think the common idea of numbers like ratio wise for how many leads come into a funnel versus how many end up becoming deals. I think what's accepted as common a ratio is like 100 leads.
Yeah.
Will generate 10 sort of worth going to and making offers on, and then landing one of those as a deal.
Yep.
And in my experience, that's sort of like from in the beginning, that's sort of how it is. But those numbers improve as you become more experienced.
They do, yes. And then you can track those and say, look, from this month to this month, I improved from 10% to 11% or from 11 to 15%. And it makes a huge difference in your bottom line when you just track those things slowly and start edging them upward.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like lately, I don't know if it's maybe I've just become really good at screening which ones to go and see, but you know, I probably hover somewhere around 40 to 50% of the ones I go to see, I end up getting. So that's
awesome.
You know, that you can end up being to where you kind of know, like whenever you're talking to them on the phone, like this is one I need to be at right away, make an offer and follow up. Right. So the funnel is absolutely, that's the key part and the initial part of it. But I think a lot of people, probably the vast majority of people, don't follow up even after they make an offer or before they even make an offer. They think maybe they're unmotivated and they don't follow up. In this day and age with all the competition, the people landing a lot of deals are the ones that are following up.
That's true.
What do you think that's?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of competition right now, especially with, you know, wholesaling is becoming more and more popular all the time. Flipping's becoming more popular all the time. Everybody and their grandma thinks that they can be an investor, and so they're going out there, and yeah, it's the people who are willing to do the extra work that are seeing the results today. I mean, I see that over and over. The market's heating up, and the way that you succeed in today's market is you got to do what everyone else isn't doing, and that, like you said, following up is huge. The idea of like going where other people won't go. The idea of building relationships slowly even. I mean, I've been talking to guys lately about apartment complexes, and they're using the exact same strategies to buy a 500-unit apartment complex. You know, they're building relationships. They're following up. They're doing like even direct mail marketing, and they're getting these massive projects. And it just really emphasizes this idea of the funnel and perfecting each part of it. And it's all just business. I mean, this is a business in any regard, just like selling Tupperware or whatever.
Yeah, you know, it's crazy because I always am trying to think of an out of the box way, and I can't believe I just said I hate when people say out of the box. But anyway, like, you know, like think of a way to market or find a list that's not well known. You know, like finding some other source of deals that nobody's thought about. Because what do people do when they try to find ways to find deals? They you know, go online and everything, and they do what everybody else does. So, you know, finding a different way, and even maybe taking an existing strategy and tweaking it somehow. And, you know, I'd love to just tell you on this podcast, like, you know, tweak this one and do this. But then again, you're still not coming up with your own that no one else has thought about, because then if I say it, everyone else is going to start doing it. Yep. And it just gets out there. So you sort of, you know, try to come up with your own ways of doing things. And sometimes it's, you know, you try to think, you're like, well, I have no idea. Well, one way to do that is look at other industries, right?
Yeah.
So like another area, you know, another like a car industry or something, I don't know, it's like somebody else that's like marketing for leads, like what are they doing? Is there some way you can tie that into real estate? But
yeah, I think that
sorry, I just ran off with that. But
no, I think that's great. I mean, I use the analogy a lot of, you know, about once a month or so, I get this envelope in the mail, and it has a you know, like a plastic key attached to the front of it, like a physical key. And I look at that, and like, of course I read it, and it says, "You won," and I'm like, "I won!" And there's a big picture of a convertible, you know, with a bikini girl on the front. And I'm like, I want a bikini girl, and I'm really excited. And then I look down and I realize I may have also won a cup of coffee, but I won't know which unless I go in to test drive this new car, right? And so, I mean, it's just direct mail marketing, and it's, you know, it works, right? Because I read the art. I don't read most junk mail that comes in, but, you know, you put a girl in a bikini in a sports car and a key on the front of a thing, and apparently I'm going to read it. And so the idea that, like, clearly some intelligent person out there realized by a lot of split testing that by doing these certain things on this thing, they get an increased response rate. So yeah, could you take that and take it over to real estate? I mean, you're not going to put a girl in a bikini in a car on the front, but the idea of being out of the box, as they say, and thinking, that key, it's a physical object. Could you send a physical object to a motivated seller? Could you send them a dollar bill and write on the dollar bill? Yeah. Don't do that. That's illegal. I didn't recommend that. But could you do something that is like, out of the box? I don't know. So right. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's just having that in mind while you're, you might not actively be looking for it, but if you always have that in the back of your mind whenever you see things, then you look at things in a different way. So I think maybe that's more of the takeaway. But I think where I was going with that, though, I was coming all the way back around, was as I talk to more and more people that do a lot of deals, it's amazing because you think that they've got some special secret tactic, right? And it boils down to them doing the same old tried and true stuff. It's just that they're consistent with it, right?
Yep. Real estate's actually a fairly boring activity. Like, like the people that do the best with it, especially flippers. I hear that all the time. Flippers and wholesalers. I mean, they're bored to death half the time because it's so like mundane, because they just keep doing the same thing over and over and over because it works. Consistency.
Yeah. Right. I'm just blown away because, I've, talked to a lot of people lately and really all this driving for dollars. You would think that's like the first thing people hear about and start doing other than bandit signs. And, how many people, I mean, that's still, even my father to this day still says that that's the absolute best way to get great deals.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a huge fan. But lately I've been walking for dollars, but driving for dollars, I think it's fantastic. In fact, I'm going to start, like, I got a high school kid working for me this summer. I just doing odds and ends. And so one of the tasks I'm going to have her, I haven't had her start yet, but I'm going to have her start here like next week or the week after, whatever. It's just like 3 hours, 4 hours a week, whatever. It costs me, $30, $40 a week. I'm going to have her go out and just drive for dollars for me. I mean, it'll cost me, a couple $100 a month maybe, but she'll just get all these leads, put them into a spreadsheet, bring them to me, and then I can make the phone calls or I can do the whatever needs to be done further. But I just want to create a system that does that consistently and just always knocks it out. And as we get more deals, I'll increase, the amount of driving for dollars she does. Maybe I'll have 10 people doing that for me eventually. But just being consistent thing is key. And I have not been. I mean, I'm the first to admit I have not been consistent with my deal finding. Like I'll do driving for dollars for a while, and I'm like, yeah, I got a deal. And then I'll do like, MLS for a while. I'm like, yay. And then like I just kind of stop, and like I've not been very consistent. So even this is good for me to think I got to get more consistency. I always want to be creative and have fun, and I think it's important, but yeah, I think consistency is key if you need to, hit your goals.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the reason why a lot of investors, including myself, I'm with you on that, aren't consistent is because we do get bored. It's like we want to try something else. Let's see if this will work. Let's try this. It's the next nice, new, shiny thing that we see and we run after. But
yeah, and that's why I think it's probably better to think on, like if you're getting bored, I mean, find ways to make your system work even better and more smoothly without you, and then go get on board with more fun projects that aren't going to interact with your business, right? But if you're going to kill what's doing well just because you're bored, I think that's dangerous.
Oh, yeah. So you've talked to a lot, especially with you guys' podcast and the forums on the website and everything. You've seen a lot of investors, and you probably have seen the progress of a lot of investors. Is there some common trait that you've noticed in the really successful investors, apart from a lot of new people that fail quickly and just kind of are out of the business?
Yeah, I mean, so real estate is kind of like, I think it's called Plinko. Is that what it's called? I think what's that one show with Bob Barker? The Price is Right, right? And so they had a game on there. I think it was called Plinko or something like that, where like they dropped this coin, this large round disc or whatever, and it drops down this board that's covered in little like pegs, and there's thousands of pegs on this board. At the very bottom, there's a bunch of rows of like numbers or something like that. Anyway, so they drop this coin in the top, and it comes down, and it bounce. And at the very bottom, it ends up in one of these slots, and then I don't know what the point of the game is. It's TV, stupid, whatever. But the idea that like that's kind of like real estate, in that like when you get into it, you constantly bump into things. It's like bump, and you run into problems. You get stopped. You hear that wholesaling is the best way, and then you hear flipping, then you bump into this, and you bump into that. The ones that seem more successful, they fight through that and just keep pushing forward despite that. All the million messages that they're hearing and everything like that, they just don't give up. They just keep working, because clearly people are making money in real estate. Millions of people in the world are making money through real estate every year. So it obviously works, yet millions more are not making money through real estate despite trying. So what makes the difference? I think it's just the people that are persistent and that just keep going forward. That's what I see over and over and over is they tried, it didn't really work. And they just kept improving, not just trying the same thing and hoping for better results, but actually improving, figuring out why it didn't work, and just keep bouncing and keep going forward.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The focus, it's like you're not going to give up, right?
Yep.
There's going to be issues. I guess maybe that's part of, like, a big part of it as I look more into this is, everybody's out there selling products and they want to make it seem so easy, right? And so it's like the promise of an awesome life real easily. Just have to decide that you want to do it, right? And then you go in there and you find out, wow, there's like all these things that could come up, things I have to deal with, and you didn't think it was going to be that way. And then you're out quickly because you thought it was just an easy thing to do. As long as you go into it knowing that, there's going to be stuff to work through, just like everything else. The chances of making big money on each deal are there, and it's worth it, but you've got to be willing to deal with whatever comes your way.
Yep, very much so.
Let me see. What are your current goals for your business? I know you talked about having, building up sort of an army of people driving for dollars for you. You have any other goals for your business?
Right now, I want to shift a little bit. For a while, we're at that point in my business where I'm like, I have to either go bigger or go smaller. And I've been saying that for a while because I'm at like 42 units of my own and I don't have any full-time employees. And so I'm at that kind of weird place where I need to either go bigger or smaller because I can't really sustain it right now without having to work a whole lot. And I don't like working a whole lot unless I'm making a lot more money. So anyway, I'm at this point now where I need to go bigger, and I'm going to go bigger. So kind of my next goal is I want to double the number of units I have. I want to pick up from, doing a couple flips a year, 1 or 2 or 3, up to maybe 4, 5, 6 flips a year. I want to get a few full-time employees working for me, and I want to build out my property management business because I want to get into property management as well as just another avenue for making more income and another system that manages my properties and has employees that work for it. So that's kind of where I'm going next, I think, with my business.
Cool. So you're going to bring in people to do driving for dollars, or anything else that you've taken steps towards to reaching those goals?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so I'm big into the idea of systems, right? Like things that I do really well or that I figured out how to do and I don't like doing or I don't want to do anymore, packaging them up into like a single job description, like driving for dollars, right? You do this A, B, C, D, and E, and then outsource it to somebody else. And so same thing with like bookkeeping. I'm going to outsource bookkeeping. That'll be probably the first thing I outsource like now. And then like, I know there's a lot of these like things that I need to do. I mean, even ideas of like, the fact that I'm still updating my website every couple of days with new listings for rental properties or whatever, those things, like why do I do that? Why don't I outsource that? Why don't I create a system to handle that? And so I'm really going to try to systematize every piece of my business, not just because I don't want to work. Like I still will work the same amount of hours as I always work. I just like doing this. I'm obsessed with real estate, but I want to go bigger, with that. If I'm no longer worried about entering data into a spreadsheet, I can go out there and find the next 50 unit, 100 unit apartment complex that I want to buy and put together.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it amazing when you stop at the end of a day and look back at all the things that you did that day and think it doesn't feel like I got anything done?
I know.
And you did a million little things that maybe other people should be doing for you.
Yeah, I've been huge into the book.
It's just crazy.
Have you read The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
Awesome book.
Yeah, I love that book. I read that all the time. I mean, I've read it so many times now, it's crazy. And now I read it every morning. I read 10 pages every morning just to start my day because it like makes me remember, don't focus on everything. Just focus on what matters. What's the one thing that I actually have to accomplish today? That's what I'm going to go accomplish. And ever since reading that book, it totally changed it. I mean, almost everything about my business, everything about my life. It's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, I printed out a bunch of like full page size things that say, until my one thing is done, I'm not doing anything else. Everything else is a distraction.
Yep. I have a reminder that goes off every day. I think it's at like 11 in the morning, and it says, until your one thing's done, everything else is a distraction. Same thing. It goes off every day on my phone and reminds me of that.
That's awesome. So how do you keep track of what your one thing is?
So, I mean, I think you have different one things, right? You have your one thing in different areas, like one thing with my wife and the one thing in my house, or the one thing for bigger pockets that I'm working on, the one thing for my real estate. So right now, the one thing for my real estate, I kind of said it a minute ago, is that idea of I need a bookkeeper. That's the one thing for my real estate right now because that's taking up most of my wife's time. Like she spends a lot of time bookkeeping. And so like if I can get her out of that, that frees up a whole lot of her time to be able to help with more stuff and to do, other random things that we're doing. And so I always think in terms of, there's this message in the one thing called goal setting to the now. You look at your future 5 years from now or 10 years from now and say, what is the one thing I have to do this year to accomplish my 5-year goal? And then what is the one thing I have to do this month to be on track to hit my 1-year goal? Then what is the one thing I have to do this week to hit my 1-month goal? What's the one thing I have to do this day to be on track to get my 1-week goal? And then what's one thing right now at this very moment I need to do to hit my 1-day goal? And if you just work backwards like that, it actually prioritizes your day very, very well. And I can kind of see, okay, well, here's what I need to do in this area. Here's what I need to do in this area. And then you have benchmarks as well. Okay, here's my goal for the 1 month, 1 year, 1 week, whatever. So that's how I kind of prioritize and figure out what my one thing is.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I mean, for whatever you do in life,
yeah.
like having something like that to where you're shooting for something. You're not just blindly saying, I just want to make a ton of money.
Yep.
I don't know how I'm going to do it. I'll try this today, that tomorrow.
Yep.
It's the people that have that goal, that shoot for it, that make it. And so everybody hears about their success and thinks, oh, they just got lucky. They did it overnight. It's never that way.
Yeah. I've been huge into this idea of goal setting lately. And the idea that I in my life, every single time I think I've set a goal, and no matter how big the goal is, I've hit it like faster than I ever thought possible. When I put my head on, and that's not just because I'm like, special. That's just how human nature works. When you have a goal and you go after it, it happens so much better than if you didn't have that goal to begin with, right? So like, I've been thinking lately, like, what is that goal? What do I want to achieve next? What's it going to be? Lately I've been thinking about Tesla. I'm like, I really want a Tesla, but it's like $1,000 a month for a payment for a Tesla minimum. Mm-hmm. So then I'm like, okay, what if I just set a goal and said, my goal is to buy enough rental properties or flip enough houses to buy a Tesla for free in the next 6 months. Like that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to say, okay, I need either 100,000 in cash from flips or I need 1,000 a month in cash flow from properties. Okay, well, how do I do that? To hit my 1-year goal, what do I need to be on track for this month? What do I need to be on track this week? And so I haven't actually physically said that my goal yet because I don't know if I actually want to be the guy with the Tesla in my town, but I don't know. I'm working through those limiting beliefs right now. So.
Yeah. Do you have a vision board?
I don't, and I'm reading. Yeah, I know what they are. I love the concept. I'm listening to The Success Principles by Jack Canfield right now on Audible, and he talks a lot about the vision board, and I probably should have one. I mean, I got a picture of Italy sitting next to me that I look at a lot because I love Italy, but that's about the consistency of my vision board. But you have one?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, that's the story I always tell about my getting a pilot's license, because whenever I put that board together years ago, and I cut out the picture of the airplane, in flight, yep, and put it on there on the vision board along with a bunch of other things, I honestly didn't really feel like I'd ever do it. It's like I'm putting this here, and I didn't say or like really stop and think much about it, but I didn't really know that it would ever happen. Like I just didn't think much about it. And honestly, I never really looked at that vision board much. It was up on the wall where I could see it, but I was so busy with everything, with the family, with business and everything. I never really stopped to look at it much. And then next thing I knew, I had already been flying for a little bit, and I went and looked at it, and I said, oh my gosh, I did it and didn't even think about it, and some of the other things that were on there were completed. Yeah. And it's just amazing how it's just, I guess because you have it in your mind, like when you put it there, you kind of committed to it a little bit and without thinking much about it.
Yeah,
even
I think
if
it's
you
like
don't plan, it's sort of like you.
Yep. I think there's something subconsciously that just goes in your head and just works on it when you're sleeping and when you're eating and whatever. You're not even thinking about it. It's working.
Right. It's like the law of attraction, I guess, is what a lot of people call it. So that's really awesome. If you've never seen The Secret DVD, that's
I haven't
something
actually
to watch
watched
too.
it yet, but I feel like I've read every book about it. I've never actually watched the movie or read the book The Secret, but I'll have to do that one of these days.
And some people think it's kind of hokey, but
yeah, I don't care.
I help it.
I don't care why it works, like whether or not it works for the reasons. Like the Success Principles talks a lot about it, and I don't care why it works, but it does seem to work. And so, like for whatever reason, whether it's spiritual or physiological or whatever, I don't really care. The fact that it does seem to work for people who use it, so I like it.
Yeah, and I guess it has something to do with maybe firming up exactly what you want, right?
Yeah.
For you to create it, you have to figure out what you want, and there's probably only so much space to put things on there, you sort of determine what you want most.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's a big part of it. Hey, have you ever used Trello?
We actually use that at Bigger Pockets all the time. Yeah, that's how we
Awesome.
organize. I mean, I don't use it for my real estate, but I use it for bigger. I guess I actually should use it for real estate. I just use it for Bigger Pockets, and I love it.
Yeah, I was going to say, after I read the one thing, I had already been using Trello for a lot of the software stuff that we do. But I thought, this is the way to plan out all these things I need to do that I want to do to reach my goals, and then organize them so that the one thing is at the top of the list. And so I have like a to-do list of cards, and I went and I didn't think about order. I just thought about all the things I needed to do in order to achieve a certain goal. And I put them there just like real quick brainstorming. And then after I had everything I could think of on there, then I went and organized them, just drag and drop to where the most priority one was at the top.
Yep.
And then down, lower priority down. And then I just moved that over to a doing column, so that I'm always just focused on the one thing because it's the only thing in the doing column.
Yeah, I like that.
And so that's just an awesome way to like remember all those things, because you can write them out, but if you put that piece of paper somewhere that's like in a stack of papers or in a drawer somewhere, you won't keep to it.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna steal it from you and start doing it.
No, you can't steal it.
Too bad. I'm taking it. It's funny.
No, it's free too.
Yeah, it is free. It's a great tool. You mentioned the idea of like you were talking about the you put the plane on your vision board or whatever. Like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, was when I first said, you know what, I'm gonna get my pilot's license. I told myself that that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have a goal for that. And then it was 3 days later, I'm talking to this old guy who's actually a real estate investor that I've known around my area. We're not close, but we talk occasionally. And I ran into him, and I'm talking to him, and he's like, yeah, whenever I go out to the field and clean up my plane. And I was like, wait, you fly? He's like, oh yeah, I got a couple planes out there. And he's 75-year-old guy, well past. I mean, he's not really doing a lot of investing. Well, I didn't think he was doing investing. Now he's building 180 houses or something crazy like that. But
wow.
Anyway, he's like, yeah, well, let me take you up. I'll teach you how it's all done. And so I'm like, again, out of nowhere, I just decided I want to get my license. And then this guy randomly tells me that he's a pilot and he wants to take me flying and teach me how to do all this stuff. So I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. You open yourself up for it. And that's, sort of whenever we have lulls in our house flipping business, my wife and I'll get to talking about it, and we'll say, let's make some changes to get things going again. And, it's almost like immediately after that, even before we make any changes, awesome leads start coming in. It's just amazing. I don't know how, it's just, that you open and especially if more than one person, so you and your wife or a significant other, whenever you kind of have the same things, I think it amplifies it. I don't know. It's a weird thing, but, one example too that I experienced recently was I was testing out some of the software we were making, and I was calling up other investors in town, and I was sort of giving them a run through of it. And I was plugging in this address, right, for this property. And it's an address I've used for years just because it's the first one that ever comes to mind for me for some reason. And it's a house in town that about 8 years ago I had driven by, driving for dollars, and saw it was a historic big house. And it was really run down, and thought maybe it was vacant. So I mailed a letter to them, and probably 4 or 5 letters over a period of several months. And I talked to the guy that was that owned it, and he was saying that his kids, he would be okay with selling it, but his kids don't want him to sell it. And so I followed up with him, maybe a letter per year for a couple of years, and that was the address of that house that I was using a couple months ago when I was talking to these other investors. Now, mind you, it's been 4 or 5 years since I've contacted him, and so when I'm telling people, okay, well, let's go in here, whack like we're adding this lead, use this address. And I did that probably 4 or 5 times with other investors, and I used that address as a sample lead. And lo and behold, I got a phone call out of the blue, and it's this guy, that owns his house, and he says, hey, I'm ready to sell.
That's awesome.
And I said, you got to be kidding me, And I went out there, I looked at it, had to evaluate what to offer him. It's been so long, and then I ended up buying it. We wholesaled it, we bought it, closed on it. And then sold it to another investor, made a great profit on it. But
that's awesome. That's very.
And
cool.
I hadn't even contacted him in years. But anyway, so that's just the sort of the power of attraction too. But
there you go.
a lot of great information in this, and I feel like I've started rambling on here. So is there a way for all the people listening out there to find you?
Sure. I mean, I'm obviously on all the social media things. I'm big into Instagram these days. I love Instagram. I don't even know my username. You can find me there. But Twitter is Brandon at BP, and then obviously on Bigger Pockets, you can find me there. I'm pretty much always on Bigger Pockets, so you can find me there.
Yeah, and Brandon also, you check out the blog on Bigger Pockets, does and other articles and everything. He's just awesome, full of information, super nice guy.
Thank you.
Is always looking out for everybody, and just a great guy anyway. So thanks again for being on the show, Brandon.
I appreciate it.
We will have the show notes on flippingjunkie.com. Just go to flippingjunkie.com/podcast/Brandon Turner. And Brandon is Brandon, and then Turner, Turner.
Oh, I thought you were going to do like Brandon Turner, or I thought you were going to do like /sexy or /tall, dark, and handsome or something. But I guess /Brandon Turner works. Whatever.
We can look into doing that. I don't know. If anything, try the Brandon Turner. That'll for sure work. I don't know. We might stick some things on the end just for him. I'll send him a link with that on there just as a thing that'll forward over to that same page.
That's right.
But on that show notes page, we'll include all the awesome things that the key points Brandon shared with us, as well as links to, we talked about Trello.com and then some of those books, The One Thing, Success Principles, and all that. So we'll have links to those things, as well as for a way for you to find Brandon on the show notes page. All right. Well, I think we're about done here. Thanks again, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much for listening to the Flipping Junkie podcast. Now, next week, I'm interviewing my good friend that moved here from Australia and has rehabbed over 150 houses in Texas. I can't wait to share that interview with you. So make sure that you subscribe and visit flippingjunkie.com for more awesome house flipping education.